Honored to be joined with award-winning actor and producer Sevier Crespo. Sevier, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been, loving the little bit of banter we've been having, kind of comparing Los Angeles weather to Florida weather right now, because this past weekend, as we're recording this, it was down in the 20s in Florida, which is almost unheard of, but Florida's
Wow.
like a tale of two different states sometimes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I didn't know it was that low. That's pretty low.
Yeah, over the weekend, I think it got down to like 27 or 28 where I live. It's
Wow. Wow.
weather's, it just gets, I don't know how consistent the weather could be sometimes in Los Angeles. I hear that it's like high 60s, low 70s pretty
Yeah,
much all the time.
but it fluctuates, I have a deck that I go out to in the mornings and it's when it's quiet. I'm an early riser. So I'm up between 5 and 5:30 and I like to kind of have my moment. And my producing partner was here and I'm used to it, but she went to go sit down on our, outside furniture. And she's like, there's ice here, like ice, like all your furniture is covered in ice. Like it's been frozen. So, and I was like, oh, I guess that's true. But yeah, it's been pretty cold in the mornings. Like it's, like legit, low 40s, pushing high 30s sometimes. So it's been weird. It's been really
I,
weird. Yeah,
I never would have expected that from
I
Los
know.
Angeles, but I'm glad to hear you're an early riser too, because I don't know if you feel the same way, but whenever I wake up in the morning, half the time it's not by choice because my dog likes to wake up early and she likes to make sure
Okay,
that I'm awake too.
there you
I
go.
find that I get a lot done in the morning before I have to go to my day job, because it's kind of, I tell people, especially if you're in a relationship, you got to have that little bit of you time to do what you
Yeah,
need to do. And I find that early mornings before I really start to get ready for the day are mine. So it's good to hear
yeah.
that I'm not alone in that.
No, you're not. You're not. I enjoy it because it does kind of prep me for the day and just it's interesting. It's before I get into the emails and the phone calls and things from the day before. I do almost always take a second and look around and I'm like find gratitude or to be grateful and thankful for everything, because when you're in the middle of things sometimes it just feels you can't find it. Sometimes it can feel like a little too much, so I like to have at least have a moment somewhere in there where I'm like, okay, look around, be thankful, and just appreciate being here and this, not so much on your phone, not so much on your laptop, and so it's nice. It's nice. Yeah.
For sure. So you're a producer as well as an actor. So tell me a little bit about your background and what made you want to get into the movie
Um. Well, interesting. So I've obviously always loved movies. I think my first experience that I'm gonna remember was, watching my very two first experience. My very first was Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. It was with my dad, and I thought that was just mind blowing. And then of course E.T. And I think that and then my dad introduced me to Bruce Lee, so it's like I was just blown away, and it was like, this is amazing. Chuck Norris, how can I get into this or whatever? Really, it piqued my interest, right? And then Rambo was also awesome. So, but then really it was, I still always wanted to be a baseball player. That was my thing, what I always wanted to do. And when we moved from Puerto Rico to Texas, I joined the baseball team when I got to high school. Didn't make the team, which was, to this day, it's one of those things where I scratch my head on. But hey, so be it, and I needed something to replace my first period, which was athletics, and I was not about to take another class. And I think I was already taking home ec with my friends, and so the only thing available was theater, and I think I went into it and I wasn't really paying too much attention, but the teacher really, I'm never going to forget him. He was so passionate and loved talking about plays and acting and theater and his experiences in New York growing up. And I just found that all so fascinating compared to where I was living, like it just seemed there was so much more color and life and things out bigger and outside the box. And, I got on stage for the first time, and I remember said a few lines. I think it was from Shakespeare or something like that, or one of his plays, or it might have been even a Tennessee Williams. It was, so it was legendary, right? I couldn't remember, maybe not Shakespeare, but anyway, we all went around and just said a line and felt this stage and how it resonated and everything. And I was just hooked instantly. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be in this world with these creative people.
Well, it's always interesting, hearing the different actors, directors, producers that I talk to on this podcast, because there's not really a how-to guidebook to get into the industry. Like, everybody has their own unique way. So, and everybody has that moment where it just, like, a light bulb goes off in their head that you think, okay, this is what I want to do. Nothing else is going to make me happier. I have to do this. So that's really cool that you went the theater route. Now, did you find that theater acting helped your film acting later on once you got into the business?
God, I found yes, in a lot of ways, because, in theater, it's the run of the show. You're there. It's the equivalent of, doing a speech naked. You know what I mean? It's like, you're out there. So whatever happens, happens. I mean, I've had, cans that I forgot to cool down so they don't explode everywhere. It was hot and explode in the middle of the scene and whatever. So you have to deal with it, right? So yeah, it definitely, it deletes all kind of scarcity, like any kind of skittishness that you may have. It's like, no, that and like improv. It's like, you're out there, like, go, yeah, for sure.
And it's like, if you mess up, it has to become part of the show in a way. Like, no, I meant to do that. That's what I respect so much about theater actors, is that it's like acting without a safety net. You mess up, everybody sees it. If you're on set and you mess up your line, you just cut and you do another take. So I've ever since, watching, community theater that we have around here, plays in college, I have nothing but the utmost respect for those who act, especially in theater, because I don't know how I personally would handle it. I grew up with pretty severe social anxiety. So like I couldn't understand or fathom acting and projecting on a stage in front of a crowd of people. So I have nothing but respect for theater actors.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, I think it also, it hones your discipline and your commitment and your work ethic, because people count on you in film and TV, of course, and you're a team. That's how I like to view it, and how a lot of people view it, as a team, collective, create. And to add to that element, when you're live, people really count on you. You know what I mean? And the cues and behind the scenes, and it's not, things happen a little quicker. So it can have a serious domino effect, I feel, in that sense. So because of that, I think when you commit to something that you want to be part of a play or something like that, it starts to really instill work ethic in you, because then that carries over, Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So you have this epiphany, this moment of, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. What did you do next to ultimately get into where you are now?
So, if I remember correctly, okay, so I started going through, I was 16 years old at the time, I think, right? Yeah. So I started going through, like, at the time, I'm going to probably age myself, a book that was yellow and it had all these numbers in it. And I was just looking for like acting schools or acting environments. And I remember I found an acting school and I just called it. And I was like, yeah, I'm interested in taking acting classes. And what is this all about? How does this work? And it's funny, she ended up being my friend later and actually helped me when I got to Los Angeles to get settled. But I just remember her name was Christy Ford. And Christy was like, oh, she kind of talked to me. It was very sweet and nice and very kind. And she just goes, how old are you? And I was like, oh, I'm 16. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So where's your parents? Can I talk to your parents? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so I passed the phone to my dad, and luckily my dad's always he was very supportive. I think he really had a moment of like a glitch in the matrix when I was like, this is what I want to do as a career. I think it was like, what do you mean? But he was always very supportive. So I got on the phone and I started taking acting classes, and I would do them in the summer. And then, when I graduated high school, I went into the Southwest Conservatory for the Performing Arts program. And just, that's what I did. And I did it, for a few years and whatnot. And then, I didn't, after that was done, I was like, okay, how does this apply in Texas and in Dallas? Like, there was some work, but not a plethora of work. And, I was just kind of having, again, those quiet moments where you kind of just think about things. And phone rang, and it was a buddy of mine. And he just said, hey, I want to say from college. And he was like, hey, I just want to say it was awesome going to school with you. I wish you the best. I'm moving to California, and I just said, I want to come with you. He's like, what? I'm like, I want to come with you. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. And I literally just hitched a ride. He's like, you can bring whatever fits in my car, which is like clothes, an old guitar that I wish I still had or learned how to play, and some old black and white headshots. And that was it. And I just came across, half country, to California. And then, I went up north to my mom for a little bit, and then I came back down. And that was it. Yeah, he had already found a place for us and everything. And I just remember pulling up to the house in my old 89 or something like that. It was like an older model minivan with a stick shift and everything. And it was just like, I don't think it even had seats in the back. And it pulled up to this old house. He's like, I got a place for us to live. And it was just like, literally, the best way I could explain it was like the Addams Family house. Like if you just pulled up to the front of the Addams Family house, and he's like, yeah, man, and it was like a house that then had all these rooms for rent. And so you never even knew anybody. Anyway, so that was it. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
That almost sounds like a movie all in itself. Someone just packing up everything and following their dream. That's awesome, because like I can't imagine doing that. Was that like, did you have any anxieties, or was it nerve-wracking once you actually got to California, or was it just a feeling of excitement?
It was a feeling of excitement. And it's interesting. I just had this thought of my father right now as he was saying goodbye to me. And I realized, wow, my dad, like that moment where he just kind of let me go. And, it wasn't college. It wasn't on the street. It was like halfway across the country. And it was always supportive. I grew up with my dad always told me, you can do anything you put your mind to, so because of that, and he always made it seem like, yeah, go right ahead. You can do it. You want to do it, go do it. So it wasn't anxiety. I think it was very excited, but then when I got here, definitely overwhelming. It was definitely very, very overwhelming. It was like, if you've ever been to Vegas, like the very first time if you drive, you come over the desert and all you see is just total dark. I mean, I've gone in like the first time was at night. It's pitch black and all you see is just almost like this insane oasis of lights, and it's overwhelming. Same thing if you're flying in. So it was a lot of that. It was like, whoa, who do I talk to? Where do I begin?
Sensory overload.
100%, 100%. And I had never been in an environment where every single human being, for the most part, was in the business to some degree or working to be in a full-time position in the business, which was 100% different too from where I came from.
For sure. So once you got to Los Angeles, you got to work with some pretty big names in the film industry, like Robert Townsend, Jerry Bruckheimer, Michael Mann. How is it working with those individuals? Because I could just imagine the plethora of learning and information that you got from them. So what were those experiences like?
I mean, they were great, because each of them had their own moment. And, I do have to say it was thanks to a lot of people that really looked out for me, to open those doors and bring me in as a PA that led to a director's assistant with Sam Bayer. And the Robert Townsend scenario was really a very unique experience in so many ways. But with all of them, it's almost like, I guess, easier to go pick one person and then I can tell you what that was. But it was also, people open the doors for you, or really, I was always just looking at it as a job. I think that the thought of, could they put me in a movie, or could I work with them? Or maybe I could, like, whatever at that level was like never really a thought, because it was so overwhelming and so many things that I was kind of experiencing. And it was just like, just don't get fired. Like, just don't get fired, and that was it. And that was kind of it. But I think the experiences, it was very, there's a work ethic, there's a commitment. This is your life. Like, this is what you do as a career, and you own it. And, people, they take it, they deliver, they show up every day. And those that don't, you don't see them around, they're very quick to remove them and to be removed from the space in general. And I think, one of the main things that took me many years to really kind of process was understanding, this is, working with the same people and crew members and team, and I never really got that, but it was like, no, this is your team. You working with them, working schedules out to work with them. And then later on, I realized, oh yeah, that's a big deal. You know what I mean? It's a big deal because it creates something bigger than just getting a job done or working on a project together. And I think, at Jerry's or Bruckheimer's, I'm talking to him like I'm first name basis with him. At Bruckheimer's, I think what I learned there was figure it out. Like, figure it out. And they were extremely nice. It was a wonderful experience as well. But I think what I got from it, as polite as everybody, wasn't as nice. Like, even on my first day, I had a story where I was brand new. I was kind of helping with the post-production a little bit, or kind of just really manning the phones was what I was doing, and it was probably I must have been not even 2 hours, 3 hours into the position. It was like, hey, so they're calling from the Caribbean, because they were doing Pirates of the Caribbean 1 or 2, can't remember. They're like, hey, they're going to call from the Caribbean. We're all going to go to lunch. You got to patch the call through so we can connect to the cell phone. And they were like, you do this and this and this, and then you hit that and what. And I remember like, yeah. And all I could think about is, please don't call. Like, please don't call. And sure enough, they called, right? And
of course,
the phone, I remember I was like, oh, hi. They're like, hey, Sevier, can you patch us through? I'm like, yeah. And I remember I freaked out and I pushed buttons and it hung them up. And I was like, this is not good. So they called back and they were super sweet. They're like, hey, listen, we know you're new, it's your first day. but really, really, really need to like get through. And again, I've told a story a dozen times, even more. I couldn't tell you what I did or how it happened, but I got them through it. You know what I mean? And it was something as minute and as little as that, but this is back when it, you know, say again, somewhat aging myself, but this is, you know, early 2000s and whatnot, where the technology wasn't what it is today. I mean, even the phones at the office, the patch to, I mean, it was like a thing, you know? So I remember thinking, you got to get it done. The next one to that was like, I remember when they come up, the person supervisor, I believe, he had walked in and he was like, hey, he was like, you know, there was someone had given me notes like, hey, can you search for, we need stock footage for this plane, blah, blah, blah. It can't have propellers. It can't have this. It has to be this and that, sunrise, that, and it has to be jet. And they're like, I'm like, cool, yes. Not knowing even where to begin. Like I was calling people in Oklahoma. I was calling skydiving companies. I had no clue, like none whatsoever. But it was like, you just gotta figure it out. Like you just, you know, you say yes and you learn as you go, and you learn faster, you move fast, but you learn even faster.
It's the best way to learn.
100%.
From what you're saying, and you know, from my past experiences as well, sometimes it's best to just jump in the deep end and figure out how to swim.
Exactly. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I'm just imagining the early 2000s because I'm in my mid 30s, so I can still remember what the technology was like around that time. That's insane, and props to you for pulling it off. But like you said, you know, sometimes it doesn't matter how you do it. It's just that you get it
doesn't.
done.
You know what? It doesn't. It's like, you know, you may be scraped and crawled and, you know, clawed and scratched and bleeding underneath your clothes, and maybe no one will ever see it. You know what it took for you to deliver that one cup of coffee, you know, but you did it, and you did it while it was still hot.
It's like this graphic that I saw on Facebook a long time ago, and it still pops up on my feed every now and then. It's a picture of an iceberg, and it says what everyone sees, and it's like fame, success, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom under the water is like the huge portion of the iceberg, and it says sweat, tears, sacrifice, hard work. So
that's it's funny. I've seen that a couple of times, and yeah, it always kind of, you know, hits home for me, because I'm always like, yeah, that's about right. That's about right. Yeah. And it's interesting that because people that in general don't know, because those that know, because they talk to you different, there's different communication, different understanding, there's a different relationship with those that know and have done it and have been there, right? But the general population or people in general don't really know. So I find it so interesting when it can be shut down, right? People can shoot something down so quickly or try to cancel it now in this cancel culture. It's like, man, no, you know, it's like the understanding of what it takes to do something, and really not even forget the cancel culture, but I always think of like things like, you know, these Rotten Tomatoes type, you know, review sites or whatever, where it's like, you know, I'm curious to see what it took for you. How did you come up with that? Because if I guarantee you, if you took any part, for the most part, you know, into the blood, sweat, and tears of what it took from beginning to end, literally, you'd give it always no less than the 80 or at least 75. You know what I mean? So yeah, I always found it very interesting.
Yeah, I could do a whole show on that and cancel culture as well. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. But as we start to wrap up here, I did want to ask you about some of your producing ventures. I know you recently worked on a movie called Karen, starring Taryn Manning. And you also had your producing partner had a project called Call Jane that recently screened at Sundance, which was virtual. Right. So tell me a little bit about those and what got you into the producing side of things, especially, you know, on the indie film level.
Well, you know, how do I get into it? I remember I didn't, I was doing your typical waiting tables, being a bar back, being a bartender, catering, valet, janitor work. I mean, I've done it all, right? And at one point I was like, I might as well look to learn my industry and this whole thing outside of just looking to be an actor. And I happened to kind of get into it, and I went to UCLA for line producing and producing, and I kind of started to understand it, and I realized I was actually really good at it. Like, I liked it, and I'm good at it, and it's something that kind of gives me life, and so I no one would give me the time of day. What are you talking about? Even when I was working with Robert Townsend, like, they were like, you don't produce, you're not a producer. And I would get passed by all the time. And then someone asked me to do an independent feature film, and I said yes for like nothing. I think I might have gotten paid $2,000, maybe. And I didn't know 100%. Again, I was like, I'm just doing this. I know that I can pull this off. And then I had a friend who, she was working on Project Greenlight at the time, and she's like, we got your back. Like, go say yes and go do it. And if you come to any trouble, whatever, we have your back. And I did. And that was kind of the beginning of that process. And and I think what got me into producing is I like the creating of something from nothing all around, something about that. And it's like a Rubik's Cube. You got to line up all the colors and get as close as possible in this amount of time with this amount of money. And it's always new, and I think there's something kind of crazy about that I like, I enjoy, it's like taking someone's thoughts, putting it on paper. From paper, you create what you think it's going to cost. Then you get a bunch of people to agree on that. You get someone to agree on the vision, and then you get actors to agree. And it's just like, then other people, they're like, we're going to move and create this whole world. Then we're going to shoot it everywhere. Then we're going to edit, and this is, and then we're all going to sit down at the end and watch it somewhere. So it's just like, yeah. And for the first, I think maybe my first 2 or 3 films, which weren't the best, I don't think I even watched them. Like, they all had premieres in theaters and, screenings and all that. I think I might have, the first one for sure, I must have paced outside alone. And people are like, why aren't you watching the movie? I'm like, I can't. Like, it's, it's like, it's your baby, right? Like, this is like, this thing like the back of your hand. I'm sure if you're a father or, a mother, or even you're a pet lover and pet owner, you probably know your pet like the back of your hands. When something's going on, the last thing you want is for someone to go, oh, your dog is walking funny. It's like, what are you talking about? It's fine. You don't know my dog. Yeah. So yeah. And I think, but that's kind of that was my thing. And I realized I was more surrounded by more creative people, and more people that were passionate and at least willing to try and go for it. I did realize that, not to knock or belittle, diminish the restaurant and food and beverage industry, because this is not what it's about. But at least in Los Angeles, during my experience and my time frame, especially on the Sunset Strip, because if you worked on a Sunset Strip, you made the best money, and you were able to kind of be in the mix and kind of know what was happening and blah, 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 right? But it could become very high school-ish, very clique-ish. And you found out very quickly that it was hard to get out of that, because you would work late hours into 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You'd sleep most of the day. You'd have to either acting classes if you could make it, or try to do it. It was so difficult that it was almost easier to go out and drink and do whatever and hang out. And you never then moved over onto fully doing your career 110%. So that was one of the other reasons that I was like, I want to go that route. I need to be surrounded by that, because I'm dying. On Karen, look, it was the thing with Karen. It was that part of that time in our life right now in the last 2.5, 3 years, where things have been flipped on, upside down, both socially and globally. And someone called, well, one of my good friends called me and was like, hey, this project's happening. I want you to do it. Can you help me do it? It shoots in Atlanta, let's go. And I was in this moment in my life. I'm like, I want to feel like I'm contributing to something or putting something out on paper, out that just, does something, because there was so much happening and convoluted or whatever. And I think my mind, I was like, if people can just see what it looks like, not the clips that you see on social media, but like the whole gambit from beginning to end on how something can evolve into something, and see that. And I think that's what I wanted to do. So that was in the middle of that, look, it was like the whole country was divided between politically, and we're starting that situation. And it was in Atlanta when other political things were happening and things were just sensitive. And then there was COVID happening smack dab, and no one knew what was going on the beginning of 2021 and the end of 2021. So, it was, I think I lost a lot of weight. I barely slept and I lost a lot of weight because it just took everything I had, and people, and going back to what you were saying, collaborating, man, it doesn't matter if you have a disagreement or an upset or things. For the most part, every situation is different, but for the most part, you figure out a way to handle the communication and handle the situation on a human level and a person level. And if the people involved are of good quality and good people and whatever, you it's like a family. You mend up and you stick together for the greater good, because you're right, everybody believes in it or they're part of it. And there's something about that in itself. I find it interesting that you have a group of strangers, sometimes, that will meet, they agree to do this project, you agree, you get along, you want to work on it together, and then you just commit for however long, and then you either see each other again or you don't. Luckily now you can stay in communication via social media, which is great. But before that, it was, before that you couldn't, keep in touch with anybody. You couldn't see anybody, right? So I think all of those elements, but it was a learning experience. And I think Karen was just a project that I, just, I think I reached, it was like my next level type of project where I was like, I broke through the ceiling where it was like, that saying, it takes 10,000 hours to master something or become a master. I think like something like along those lines. I believe that's what it is, 10,000 hours to master something or become a master. That was the project where I was like, I'm that master. I am done. I don't need to ever, I can pick and choose what projects I want to do, how I want to work, who I want to work with. I don't need to go fishing for things or deal with certain things that I don't have to, whether it's bad attitudes or whatever, you know what I mean? I grew a lot on that picture. I mean, the weather changes in Atlanta, like it was so much, there'd be a lot of times it was funny. Amanda, who's my partner, would be like, let's go for a walk. Like I must have gone, the routine was every evening or every morning, depending on our shooting schedule, just go for a walk. It's just, you had to just to kind of, it was a great neighborhood we were staying in, just to let the mind and the body like just relax for a second. Cause it was just constant. And the environment and certain neighborhoods and people and drones and attacks. And they had its moments where it was, it felt like, it was, I just be like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it. This is, I may not make it. But looking back, it was a great experience.
That had to be a liberating feeling. You touching on the fact that, you felt like I am that master and I don't need to go fishing for things and I can pick and choose what I want to do. Despite the hardships of what you were explaining, I imagine that feeling had to be pretty liberating.
Yeah, well, I think with that, and I'll be clear about that so it doesn't come across like I'm being arrogant or whatever about my skills or ability. I learned the thing I learned the most was self-worth and self-respect and integrity for myself. And as much as we love what we do, sometimes you can sell yourself short. Sometimes you can kind of compromise on certain things and you don't go with your gut instinct sometimes, and it can lead down tougher situations. So I think that project really, when I was through with it, I think Amanda and I were both like, yeah, self-worth, self-respect, integrity, like it was, so that in that sense was awesome, right? Because it kind of all starts with you. And so that was nice because now I can fully you can walk around with your head up high consistently, no matter what. And it doesn't matter what anyone says. It's like, cool, okay, good. It's like, water off a duck's back. Don't care.
Absolutely. So what's next for you? Do you have any other producing aspirations in the works? Are you looking to get back into acting? What's in the immediate future for you?
Good question. I have, getting back into acting is kind of something that's kind of happening through different, projects and meetings and conversations. But right off the bat, like starting this year is another project that will be filmed. It's a film we'll be shooting in Puerto Rico. And then right after that, it looks like I'll be coming back to Los Angeles to do another film that shoots here. So, realistically, those are like the two immediate ones, and the other ones are kind of right behind it. We're just checking on people's schedules and availabilities and things like that. But it's pretty much, through 2023, it looks like it'll be just back to back to back on films and a couple TV shows on the producing end, that then in between have, acting projects.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. It's I'll knock on some wood there. Because I'm also a person that I don't mind sharing where I am and what's going on. I used to overshare, which then I felt like maybe it's better if you just show, let the work or where you are speak for itself. And also, I've been doing this for so long. I mean, I've had my heart broken so many times. It's just now part of life, part of my life, So until it's done, actually, I would say until it's in the can or fully complete, I'm always like, where are we with that?
Yeah.
So,
No, I
yeah.
totally get that. Do you have a website or social media that you'd like to plug so the listeners can follow you?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to follow, they can follow me on, Sevier Crespo at, that's my IG account. And from there, there's the Peanut Gallery Group on IG. And, there's same with the websites. I think the websites, Peanut Gallery Group has kind of some of the work and some of the things that are future coming up and things like that. And then I don't even look at it anymore, but I think, we'll have the Sevier Crespo website, which is, you'll be on there because it kind of keeps all the podcasts and all the things. And I guess on a good, on a cool thing, a lot of young filmmakers will listen or kind of go in there or will email me or reach out, which I actually always respond to all of them. And even some I've even had conversations with where they've been, after their film, school, in film school or whatever. Because I always feel like, paying it forward, I even though I've had rough times, I have had some amazing people have my back and take care of me and protect me at times that I didn't think I was going to make it. And so with that, I think the only thing I was ever told really was just make sure you do it for the people behind you, and that's always stuck with me. So I've always, anytime that I can always open a door for someone or help out in any way possible, I really want to help, it's nice.
And good karma is always good to have. So it's great that you do that.
Especially nowadays. Karma.
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
not mess with Mother Karma.
No, she's real. Some people don't
Very.
believe it, but she is
Legit.
real.
No.
I always like to end the interviews with this. What is one thing that you have watched recently, whether it's a movie or a series, that you would recommend to people?
If you haven't seen that Joaquin Phoenix movie, what is that? Joaquin Phoenix. Come on.
I've heard of
Treat
it, but I haven't
yourself.
seen it yet.
I'm going to tell you right now, treat yourself to a fabulous movie. And it's actually all in black and white, which makes it even better.
I think that.
Only, it's interesting because you realize where I'm just totally speculating here, but I'm like, man, if you're going to do a movie like that and you can focus on the creative and things, to make it black and white creatively is awesome, but also like, you don't have to worry about real color correction or anything real, like really like intricate like that. But anyway, it's beautiful. It's blew my mind. I had no idea what I was getting into. And it's wonderful,
I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah.
You sold me on it. Well, sir,
you're gonna thank me. I promise you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and chat. This was awesome.
Of course. Thank you for having me, and good luck to everything in a prosperous and safe new year. Absolutely.